Let us see chapter 1 in Mark Twain's The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. The title of the chapter 1 is Tom Plays, Fights and Hides. See, first in the introductory part of the novel, Aunt Polly frantically calls Tom, Tom, Tom Tomel. Just as she was searching for the boy, she pulled her spectacles, just she wears the spectacles on her nose like this, and she is looking over for Tom. Under the bed, she just inserts a long stick, whereas she could see only a cat. She resurrected the cat, of course. This is the first act, this is the first scene in the chapter. Aunt Polly, she is a loving spinster aunt. She is kind and simple. And at last she found him. And when first Tom was shown, Tom was just covering the jam with his hand, sitting on the dining table. And Aunt Polly, she prepares to give him a whipping. She shouted him a lot. Tom cries out over dramatically. Look behind you, aunt. Look behind you, aunt. Oh, he shouted. And when Aunt Polly just turns back, Tom escapes over the fence. Fence and the வேலி அப்புறம் தப்பிச்சு போயிடும். Okay, this is the first chapter. The next, what happens in the first chapter? During the supper time, Tom comes to help Aunt Polly's young slave Jim, who is chopping the wood, and Tom also wants to tell Jim about his adventures. But Aunt Polly asks Tom leading questions in an attempt to confirm her suspicion that he skipped the school or not. This boy, what he has done, actually, he did not go to school. He skipped the school and he just went to swimming class. Tom explains why his hair is wet. He said that he pumped water on his head, and he also showed his collar that, see, from the morning, it is still sewn. இன்னும் தச்சே இருக்கு பாருங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஆன்டிட்ட காமிக்கிறான். Okay, he showed his shirt to his aunt, which means that he hasn't removed his shirt from the morning. Aunt Polly is satisfied, but at the same time, the boy, the half brother Sid, he found out that the silk thread which is sewn on his shirt, it is not of white in color, but it is black in color. So from this it is understood Tom has sewn the shirt again by himself, and he has disguised this felony. So before he can punish him, Tom rushes out of the door and he runs away from the house. That's what Tom plays cookie from school. It is a typical action for a boy of his age, and because of this, he often receives some type of punishment. He is a mischievous boy, so he always receives punishment from his aunt. And this character is developed around these events such as adventures, pranks, and scrapes. He enters into willingly or unwillingly, and their consequences, the results. What is the difference between Tom and his half-brother Sid? Tom is typically a bad boy of Sunday school lessons who does not mind his elders, skips schools, and plays tricks on the people, whereas Sid is an insipid good boy who respects all his elders and does everything expected of him. Sid delights in being a tattletale. Tattletale means gossip monger. So he is a gossip monger, Sid, in being a prick and in getting Tom into trouble. Always he complains Tom to his Aunt Polly. So this is the difference between Tom and half-brother Sid's character. Tom goes out of the house furiously, but he soon forgets his anger as he practices a new kind of whistling. Whenever he wanders in the street of Petersburg, he used to whistle. அப்படி whistle அடிச்சுக்கிட்டே போவான். அப்போ போய்கிட்டு இருக்கும்போது, when he was wandering in the Petersburg street, he encounters a newcomer, and this boy is also of his own age, and this boy is larger than himself, and he dressed up like a city slicker. He dressed in an overdressed manner. And Tom and this boy get into fight, and they both wrestle. And later we come to know that this stranger, this newcomer, is none other than Alfred Temple. Tom is further contrasted, and he gets the better of the other boy, the stranger, Alfred Temple, and follows him home. But what happened? Unfortunately, the mother of the stranger, that strange boy, Alfred Temple, she appears and calls Tom a bad, vicious, vulgar child, and she scolds Tom and orders him away, just to get away from my home. She says, and Tom also returns home with his clothes dirty and torn because they both wrestled and fought with each other in the streets of Petersburg. So this boy appears with his dirty cloth and torn cloth, and Aunt Polly was shocked to see this boy. Immediately she gave him a punishment, and what is the punishment means? He has to lose his freedom on Saturday. He should not go out for playing, and he has to whitewash the fence. This is the punishment given by Aunt Polly. On Saturday, what happens, we could see. Before chapter 2, we could see the analysis of chapter 1. The first chapter, it firmly establishes Tom's relationship with his world. He is a child doing things a child would do. He lives in a slave state. He has no parents, but he has a loving parent figure, his own Aunt Polly. Though he is mischievous, he is a good-natured boy. Aunt Polly is a disciplinarian, but Tom is a troublemaker. So this is the analysis of the first chapter. Let us see the next chapter, chapter 2. The title of the chapter 2 is The Glorious Whitewasher. As Tom begins the dreaded task of whitewashing, first he meets Jim. Jim passes by. First, Tom is reluctant to whitewash the fence. Even it பிடிக்கவே இல்ல அந்த whitewash பண்றதுக்கு fence. But he inspires all the passers-by, all the other children, as if he loves to do the job. எனக்கு ரொம்ப பிடிச்ச மாதிரி நடிக்கிறான். Okay, he pretends. Then first, when Jim passes by, he asks Tom, please, Tom, I shall whitewash this fence. Then Tom asks him in return, okay, what will you give me? And this boy, he says, if you do some of this whitewashing, in return, I will give you a kind of marble, he says. And Tom collected all those marbles from Jim. And Jim, for a while, he whitewashed the fence. The next, Ben Roger approached him. After that, all the other admirers of Tom, they all just whitewashed the fence. Ben wants to try his hand at whitewashing. So he first offers him a core of the apple. He bites an apple and he donated it to Tom. And later he donated the entire apple also to Tom. Then by the middle of the afternoon, the fence is whitewashed by all the other boys, whereas Tom enjoys in collecting marbles part of Jews' harp, a kite, and many other things as payment from the boys for doing such a fantastic whitewashing fence work. And they have also coated the fence for 3 times. So this is what the second chapter ends. What is the analysis of chapter 2? Tom is able to use this basic understanding of human nature. See, he understands what are all the likings, the wishes of all the other boys. Like a matured boy, he understands the character of all the other boys, and he leads like a natural leader. That's what Mark Twain reveals from chapter 2. Then chapter 3, let us see. The title of the chapter 3 is Busy at War and Love. So the second chapter ends with whitewashing. Aunt Polly was very happy with Tom's work. And for the time remaining of that Saturday, Tom is in good spirits. So he played a mock battle with a band of friends. And they both fought with each other, war like a game. And he also wins with all his friends. Afterwards, he passes by Jeff Thatcher's house. Jeff Thatcher is none other than the Judge Thatcher, and he notices a lovely little blue-eyed creature with yellow hair. The color of the hair of that girl is yellow in color. He loves to see the blue-eyed girl with whom he instantly falls in love. So much so that the girl he was in love with the week before, first he loved Amy Lawrence, but now he started to completely forget that girl. Now he is in love with Becky Thatcher. To attract her attention, Tom begins a series of eccentric and absurd shows off. To little avoid, he was blushing, of course, standing in front of the windows, looking at the face of Becky Thatcher. So this is third chapter. So what happens immediately? The maid servant who is working in Becky Thatcher's house, she opens the window and dumps a pitcher of water on his head, and Tom rushes home immediately and goes to bed as Sid watches everything in silence. This is what the third chapter ends.